And so I have a new friend who I met just because she's a quilter, I'm a quilter. We had something to talk about the rest of the day, and now she's here and we're good friends. I'm from Beaumont, Texas, which is southeast of Houston. It's called in the Golden Triangle area of Texas. And oil was discovered there in 1902, the Lucas Gusher. You can look that up. That put us on the map. And actually, I think some of the strategic oil reserves are under Beaumont, Texas. So it was a great place to live and grow up. 125,000, I think. Nice little town. A nice town to grow up in outside of Houston. Houston's too big. It's close to Galveston. It's close to New Orleans, Louisiana, so you can get anywhere from Beaumont. And you can also run into people all over the world from Beaumont. It seems like everybody knows or has come from Beaumont. The other thing is, unfortunately, a lot of hurricanes hit down there. We're on the Gulf Coast, about an hour from the coast, and so we're in a danger zone. We don't have the tornadoes and things that you guys do up here, but hurricanes are a problem. So yeah, it's a nice place to, I've enjoyed growing up in Beaumont. I raised my children there and lived most of my life there. My grandmother, and I'm sure I bet 90% of your people say that. My mother didn't sew, she worked, and so we spent a lot of time with my grandparents. My grandmother was a nurse, but she also, she cooked, she cleaned, she sewed, she was that kind of grandmother. And we just spent a lot of time there, and my earliest memories are sewing. I learned to sew straight line on a piece of gingham fabric with a little featherweight, and of course that evolved into crochet and quilting and everything else. So those are my earliest memories of quilting, and just falling in love with anything that my grandmother did, I wanted to do, and do it well. After my children were born, I sewed forever. I was always sewing, but mostly garment sewing or sewing for my children. I really enjoyed that part of sewing, and in fact my background is heirloom sewing. I'm an heirloom Martha Pullen licensed teacher, and loved making christening gowns and things for the children. And then somewhere in there, actually I owned a quilt shop for a little while. And unfortunately, while I owned my quilt shop, I didn't get to sew very much, because when you own a business, it kind of changes things. But that, when I started out as a Viking dealer, was just going to be a sewing machine shop. Well, you can't have sewing machines without fabric. And the ladies that I hired were quilters and belonged to the Quilt Guild. And so those are really when I moved from heirloom sewing and garment sewing to quilting, because I was just surrounded with it. And fell in love with it, and ended up with a quilt store selling sewing machines. So that was really when I started quilting a lot. But I enjoyed it, and that's probably the beginning of where I understood what friendships in quilting was all about. Those two ladies that worked for me in the shop, they just of course became mother figures and aunt figures and best friends, but that introduced me to the world of quilting. I'd already been in the world of heirloom sewing and that part of sewing community, and had friends everywhere. But the quilting world opened up to me then. The friendships, the community, the sisterhood. Family is all about your birth family, but it's also about the family you choose. And sewing sisters are the best, become your best friends, your biggest support in the whole world. I've always believed that sewing just brings the world together. Now men are even more involved in sewing than they were back in my early days. But I have friendships that I have made that have seen me through cancer, that I know I can call on, that people I've never met in person, but I know are there for me and will support me. Mostly it's through the sewing world because there's a camaraderie, there's a friendship, there's a connection between women that sew, and I think it's, and I keep saying, I have to stop and say men too, because more men, of course my focus is on women, that's the way I grew up, but we care for each other, we care for our children, we care for our husbands and our families and our significant others. So it's part of our soul to care for people, and caring for people is sewing, cooking, doing those kind of things. And so I think that's what always fed my soul was in quilting. It brings people together who, whether they sew or not, really, if they're part of the quilting world, they're just good people. And you can trust those people. You feel that you can really trust those quilting sisters. Our group that's here this week on our retreat, it's our 9th year to be together. We started out as total strangers. In fact, I think it's a cute story. How I came, I had found out about Jenny Doan. And I was a frustrated quilter. I thought because of the quilting ladies that worked for me in my little shop, they were really good quilters. And so I thought every point had to meet and every half square triangle had to be just right. And I loved to quilt, but I was a frustrated quilter. I just didn't feel like I really did it well because I did other things well, but quilting I couldn't quite get. And so I started watching this lady named Jenny Doan who said, finished is better than perfect. Now a lot of people don't subscribe to that, I understand. They don't believe in that, but it opened up a world of quilting to me because I realized I could enjoy quilting. I didn't have to, if a point didn't match, I didn't have to rip out the whole thing. And I know it probably sounds like a cliche, but it really did free me up to enjoy quilting. And that's when it changed for me, the whole quilting experience. And the thing about quilting too, there's so many avenues with quilting. I make quilts of valor. I'm a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and we give quilts to veterans all the time. Project Linus, all the different projects, and I know they've been mentioned here, but quilting, I make quilting for the cancer survivors or people undergoing cancer. And I think I don't make a quilt just to make a quilt. I put myself into it, and I've got a stack of quilts. They're not made for anybody. I just love it, but if somebody comes along that I need to give a special gift to, that's what I do because it's me. It's part of who I am and what I've done. I don't just quilt to quilt. I quilt because I love it. No, actually I do keep a lot of my scraps. In fact, I'm also a certified collage quilter. Do you know what collage quilting is? You don't? It's a form of art quilting. And you use a lot of scraps in collage quilting. And basically you take a picture and you turn it into something with, almost like applique in a way. So yeah, scraps are really good. It's creating a piece of art from scraps and from a design. So it's fun. It's fun teaching people a new form of quilting. But like I say, it's art quilts. Quilts you hang on the wall, usually, although I had one student years ago, this lady, I'll never forget, she came to my class and it was like a 3-day class. All day long, she just cut, she pasted, she did this, she wouldn't, she'd put it down. And finally, the second day, halfway through, I said, Emily, you've got to start it. You've got to do it. And so she said, oh, but it's not perfect. It's not, I don't think it's quite right. I said, just do it. We can fix it if it's not. That ended up being the most beautiful bed quilt. She started out as the art quilt, and she ended up making a magnificent bed quilt. So, so that part of quilting I think is fun, to let people stretch in a different direction. So anyways, I enjoy that. In fact, I taught Jenny Doan to collage quilt.
Nice.
I sure did. I was teaching a class here and she came in, she stopped by and she said, oh, I have a kit somewhere, I'd really like to do that. And I said, well, come by and I'll help you get it done. And so she came by, and I've heard the quilt is still hanging in her office. She finished it, and I had all the ladies in our class help her. And so we got it done. It was a fun evening. Picking colors. That's the hardest thing for me. I've just never been an art person. I've often thought I should have studied that because that's just difficult for me. I have to be honest. I mean, going in and looking at different I love a kit. Kits are fabulous for me because all the colors are there and everything's been chosen. If I go into my stash and look, it's overwhelming for me. Now I can pick out red, white, and blue, or I can pick out blue and gold, or blues and whites, but going outside of my box is difficult. So kits are my friend. I love kits. That's interesting because I love to teach children, having background in children's garment construction. I've taught my own grandchildren, my one granddaughter. My grandson didn't kind of buy into it, but one granddaughter did, and another one's 10 years old. And unfortunately, they live up north, so I don't get to spend time with them a lot. But I have taught a lot of kids, and I enjoy teaching children to quilt because I think it's something that will carry them through all kind of things in life. Mainly, I like the idea of them learning to do something they can give back. Give somebody a quilt. Make a little, 9-patch or something. Make it for your doll, but use it as a gift so they learn that quilting is all about giving of yourself. And I really believe that. Enjoy it. Enjoy every step. Think about, as you're making it, think about what you'd like to do with it or who you'd like. Make it for your grandmother. Make it, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine a more special gift than my granddaughter making me a quilt, or any child that I've come into contact with. But that's how I feel. I just feel like it's such a part of yourself, your time and your investment of your time, that you're usually thinking of that person the whole time you're making it. So I find it very relaxing. I love doing something that I know I can finish. I see an end to a project. I have more quilts and more patterns than I will ever finish. But why do I quilt? I quilt because it's something I can accomplish, something I feel like I do well, and something I can share with others. And the other thing is, I have to say, coming to these retreats, the women that you've come into contact with and who are part of my circle, meaning the whole world circle, I have to tell, as an example, I sat at the airport to fly down here, and the lady sitting next to me, I looked at her little bag she had, and I said, "Oh, is that a name bag that I knew a pattern maker?" And she said, "Yes, it is." She was on her way here. Not many people you just run into in the airport who are headed in the same direction. And so I have a new friend who I met just because she's a quilter, I'm a quilter. We had something to talk about the rest of the day, and now she's here and we're good friends. So that is why I quilt. I quilt for all the love and experience that comes with meeting all these people, coming together, and anywhere you go, you'll find a quilter. Anywhere in the world, you'll find a quilter. Hi, my name is Zelma Milgram Reed, and this is why I quilt.